One tricky thing about this for me as I've gone into this is it's very different in different places. And entrenched interests in any domain mean really different things. The reason it's been hard to get congestion pricing in New York City off the ground is different than the reason it is hard to get something done with multifamily housing in Atherton, which is different than why Diablo Canyon almost closed and may still someday close, a nuclear power plant in California, which is different than why we haven't built a UC except for Merced since 19. There is a kind of specificity to this, which is tricky. Is the only way I can put it. The Burning Man organization suing the Bureau of Land Management to stop a geothermal exploratory drill from happening outside Gerlich, Nevada. Like all of these are different. Like what it means for the Burning Man institution to be an incumbent, and what it means for homeowners to be incumbents, and what it means for a community to not want a beloved forest near to be turned into solar panels. We have a lot of language like incumbents and status quo and entrenched interests and special interests. And I think that it's valuable language, but it often flattens a tremendous amount of nuance, including nuance within projects, right? Do we have actually good models of how to do community voice well and quickly? Um, are we so I just did a podcast with Nick Bagley. I keep saying Bagley, who's a law professor at the University of Michigan, and he's a liberal. He was chief counsel to Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and he has this very, from a liberal perspective, I think incendiary article called I think it's called like the liberal procedure fetish or something like that. But the point is procedure fetish, and his point in that is that one problem in liberalism is that there's a tendency to try to legitimize state action through the imposition of a lot of procedure, a lot of procedure, and that's wrong. The way state action is made legitimate is by being prompt, fast, responsive, and fair. And that procedure actually doesn't get you there. It looks like it does. It sounds like it does. It feels to the people doing it like it does, but it's not actually having that outcome. And so it is failing in making the action legitimate. And that's something really worth considering. I mean, in many cases, what you have, I think, is not really that a bunch of interests gathered together and got the exact process they want. What you often have is a process meant for a very different thing that is now running in a very different way. This is not exactly on the supply side liberalism topic, but I think a lot about how the ballot initiative process in California was created by the progressive movement in the early 1900s because the railroad interests had bought up the entire legislature. And then a couple of years ago, it is used by Uber and Lyft, who, in certain ways, I think one could imagine as being modern day successors of past very large transportation interests, to put down a constitutional amendment saying that no alterations can be made around how we think about their employees, except with a 7/8 vote of supermajority of the legislature. Now, maybe you love that requirement, maybe you don't, but whatever the ballot initiative process was meant to do, it was not that. It's kind of working in the exact opposite way. So you also just do have this reality of long running processes getting captured by whoever happens to be around and have the resources to capture them. And sometimes that's people who want money out of it. Sometimes people want preservation, sometimes safety, whatever it might be, environmental standards. But it does create a kind of difficulty in getting anything done. So I think of this as kind of a socio-political dial that has been set really high across a lot of different areas of society. But unlike in some other things I've covered, if you want the Senate to move faster, you could really just get rid of the filibuster. There isn't like the one thing here, right? There isn't the one statute I would change, the one ballot initiative I would repeal, the one sort of layer of this I would like elevate up to state government as opposed to local government. It's really very case by case. And the fact that it happens in so many places in so many different ways, I think speaks to there being a kind of more generalized force and sort of social evolution behind it, as opposed to being just like one mistake by a bunch of bad decision makers somewhere.